All right, so today what we're going to be taking a look at is the Prime Day deals that are going on right now on Amazon. I want to see if there's actually any good deals. The last time that we saw the Prime Day deals, there wasn't exactly anything remarkable. There was about one deal that was really good. That lasted for just a couple of hours, and everything past that was kind of just average pricing for most mini PCs. All right, so looking up mini PCs here on Amazon, we can see what some of the prices are. A lot of things say Prime Big Deals, but if you actually look at the price history of a lot of these things, they're not far off from what they usually are. So immediately, I'm not seeing any spectacular deals, though it isn't like any of these are at a horrible price, just not exactly a great deal, which unfortunately has been kind of the trend for 2024. Mini PCs kind of hit a point of stagnation, mostly due to the fact that the 8000 series is just a refresh of the 7000 series, and because of that, prices haven't exactly moved down at all. Of course, we do have the new AI chip series from AMD out, but those aren't really hitting any reasonable prices yet since they're so brand new. And of course, because there are no new products to start to push some of these prices down, we're kind of just stuck in the same region that we've been in for a little while now, where Alder Lake N series processors are in mini PCs that are anywhere between $100 to $200. Seems like the Ryzen 5000 series, usually the Ryzen 7 5800H or any variant of that, is around the $300 price point, though these are systems that come with 32 gigabytes of RAM and a 1TB SSD, which is nice to see. A lot of these systems tend to just have 16, and not just 16, but also only 512 gigabytes of storage. So having a 1TB SSD standard is actually pretty nice, especially since you do get the 10% savings, but you're not exactly getting an incredible deal here. This Ace Magic system right here is exactly what I'm talking about. It is under $300, so we are at $270, but it is only 16 gigabytes of RAM and a 512 gigabyte SSD, which means you're probably going to end up upgrading this, at least in terms of the SSD. One of the better deals is actually this Apple Mac Mini with the M2 processor, though that's only 8 gigabytes of RAM. 8 gigabytes of RAM isn't that bad on Mac in comparison to Windows, but it's still not exactly great. I would really love to see 16 gigabytes on this, but at this price point, it's actually a pretty solid deal if you're someone that is looking for a Mac, or you have a family member that is mostly a Mac user or an iOS user and they just want the whole unified experience. Mac Mini in general has a history of being a relatively decent deal from Apple, and ever since they released the M series of processors, the price points of these have actually been pretty rock solid. So a deal like this where it's $500 even for it, not exactly the worst deal ever, but again, that's only if you really care about being a part of the Apple ecosystem. One of the biggest downsides really has just been the fact that from both AMD and Intel, their newer generation products have really just been priced at some ridiculous price points where, I mean, this Asus Nook, and to be fair, it's Asus, it's just in general pretty expensive, but this Nook here with a Core Ultra 7 155H and 32 gigabytes of RAM with a 1TB SSD, $1,000. This has not moved the price at all of pretty much any mini PCs because it's so far above what is most standard. So not exactly a great deal here at all. And that in general has kind of been one of Intel's biggest weak points, is the fact that even this i9 12900H, which is quite a bit old at this point, is still $640 for that processor, 32 gigabytes of RAM and a 1TB SSD. Now this is a very powerful CPU. It actually is capable of beating out pretty much anything that AMD has at that price point, at least in terms of CPU performance, but the GPU falls apart there, and you're kind of paying a lot for something that isn't exactly going to be a great all-around system. Well, hold on now, what is this? Interesting. I've never heard of the company before, but they're selling a 12900HK, 32 gigabytes of RAM and a 1TB SSD for $430. Now, biggest downside of this is it's DDR4 RAM instead of the DDR5 that's in the B-Link over here. But I don't know if that's really worth the price increase. That being said, if you need a 12900 HK, you probably do want faster RAM. But at that price point, it actually doesn't seem like that bad of a deal if you're really adamant about going down the Intel route. Actually, one of the better prices that I've seen for this, especially since it's not a bare bones unit. It might actually be a pretty rock solid deal. This Ace Magic system, please, for the love of God, don't buy this. Don't buy this at all. Please don't buy this. Just get yourself a better laptop than this for cheaper. Like, you are overpaying so much if you buy this thing, because you are buying a laptop essentially without a screen and without a battery for more money and worse specs than what you can get at this price point. It doesn't make any sense to buy this, really. Now, the Beelink EQ-R Seer is a little bit more interesting because of the fact that it is a Ryzen 5 6600H with 16 gigabytes of RAM and a 500 gigabyte SSD, but it is at least below $300. And the benefit of going with this system is the fact that you actually do get driver support in this day and age. That's one of the things that annoys me the most. The fact that there are still systems being sold with 5000 series APUs from AMD, and yet there is no modern drivers from this. Like, the most recent drivers are from Mark. And to be fair, this isn't exactly powerful enough to play most modern games anyway, but there are a lot of lighter titles that do run on these that just will eventually not work if there are any driver issues that end up coming up, because a lot of games nowadays get consistent updates. One of those updates might end up breaking performance, and a driver update might be what's necessary to fix that, and you will just never get it here. With this, you will get that at least, though it is a very cut down APU. So it's not exactly a remarkable deal, but if you're looking for a gaming system at this price point, this is really the better route to go. I feel like if you truly care about gaming, you really just should not be looking at 5000 series at all anymore. 5000 series is great if you just need CPU performance, because that you don't need drivers for that. But if the GPU, if the iGPU is what you care about, you really have to be looking at 6000 series and above, because if without RDNA, you're kind of just left in the dust in terms of whether or not you're going to get driver updates, and realistically that's just not going to happen. Another thing you might see is this mini PC here, and I have seen a lot of people fall for this because of the fact that you see the i7, you see the fact that it has a full dedicated graphics card, and you think, well, this might actually be pretty solid for $500. Don't, please, for the love of God, do not buy this thing. The GTX 1050 is just so old at this point, and even with 3 gigabytes of RAM, this is going to prevent you from even launching a lot of modern games. This just is not worth it. If you're looking for a gaming system for $500, either buy an APU based mini PC or just build yourself a budget gaming PC. But this is just not a great deal at all. It is not worth it. I don't recommend this in the slightest. Now, one system that I do think is kind of an insane deal right now is this system right here. The Boss Game P3 with the 6900HX, 16 gigabytes of RAM and 512 gigabyte SSD can be found for $310. And at that price point, it is beating out pretty much systems that have way worse specs than this. This is actually a pretty rock solid deal. I would pick this up if I was in the market for something that had 6000. You pretty much have double the core count of the 6600H, and this system is insanely quiet. Now, it does run a little hot because of the fact that it's quiet, but again, the heat is really not a problem. The system itself is quiet. It never got to the point for thermal throttling for me, but obviously that's going to depend on your ambient temperature, so do keep that in mind. But if you're just in the market for something that is actually 16,000 series base, this is a pretty solid deal, though there are not that many of them left. If you're willing to spend a little bit more money, you can also try out this Gem 10 mini PC. I have not gotten my hands on this, so I'm not going to give you a full endorsement of this. Also, ignore the 100 pack logo there. I don't know why that's there, but that's not going to, you're not getting 100. Do not assume you are getting 100 of these, okay? Please, for the love of God, do not assume that. But I have actually been very interested in getting my hands on one of these because of the fact that you do get the 6800H, 32 gigabytes LPDDR5 RAM, which means that this is actually going to be significantly faster than what is standard with most 6800H mini PCs. Those usually tend to come with SODIMM memory, and that for that generation caps out at 4800 megahertz, as opposed to the 6400 megahertz that you would get with this. This is significantly faster, and that is going to give you a noticeable gaming performance improvement. And speaking of gaming performance, it actually has an Oculink port as well as Thunderbolt compatible port. So that means eGPU setups you can actually do with this system. And really one of the biggest selling points to me is the fact that it actually has 3 NVMe SSD slots for what seems to be a very compact package. This is actually really great because most systems with this hardware, and really most mini PCs that I've seen in general, cap out at just 2 M.2 SSDs, while this can have all the way up to 3. You get that faster memory and you get Oculink, all for $360. This actually does seem like a really rock solid system. I would love to get my hands on one of these. I might end up picking one of these up. I'll have to see. But if you're interested in a system like this and you pick this up, let me know how it goes for you. Obviously, if you're buying off of Amazon, you have a very generous return window. So if it gives you any issues, you could always return it. But just in case, if that Boss Game system ends up selling out, this actually is not a bad deal at all at $360. Yes, it's more expensive, but again, you get that extra M.2 slot, you get the faster memory, and you get Oculink. It doesn't seem like that bad of a deal for an extra $50 if you ask me. And of course, all of these AI mini PCs, ones that have the newest generation of Intel processors, they're still grossly expensive, and Lunar Lake is coming out soon on mini PCs. There's already mini PCs that you can pre-order for it, but keep in mind that those prices are also equally as ridiculous as this right now. So I'm going to keep looking for other deals out there, but this is pretty much just a first video to let you know my initial reactions to some of these deals here. There are some gems here and there, but the vast majority of stuff is, you know, like it tells you it's on sale. It's really not a deal. These are price points that these systems have been at for a while now. So nothing too remarkable, but again, there were some hidden gems there that, you know, we found in this video. So I'm going to link all of those down below if you want to check them out. I'm going to keep looking through deals. I might end up posting another video today, maybe even one tomorrow. We'll see. But it really seems like Prime Day just is not exactly a great deal from any of these companies most of the time, which makes sense. It's usually just a day for Amazon to try to clear out some overstock of things that aren't exactly selling. So if you're interested in junk, I mean, it's usually pretty great for that. A lot of the times, if you're looking for something actually really good, you'll rarely find that. But again, check out those hidden gems that I found down there below if you're interested in any of those systems. If you're on a Ryzen 5000 series mini PC and you've been looking for an upgrade, that Boss Game system or that system with the 6800H and the LPDDR5 memory is actually kind of a great deal if you're looking for that upgrade without going too crazy with price point. But anyways, I'll catch you guys in the next one.